It is part 2, and we're finishing up our DTS alternator project. One thing you want to do before you get ready to put the radiator in is make sure you have all your wires hooked up. We had a ground in part 1 that bolted in right here. Your B positives back here. We're going to have to figure out covering that up because we don't need that getting shorted out against something. You got your field wire that goes in down here. Make sure that goes back in. Part 1 I left off and I didn't have that wire plugged in, but you need to do that. If you want to cover that up, we can get some black tape and tape it up that way since the boot's broke. You might notice also the quality of this part of the video might be a little bit less than normal because we're using the shop phone, because my phone that I use for recording with, I'm using this really garbage video editor and it sucks up all my memory, so it takes me about 26 attempts to try to get the video to upload. I apologize for that. You might also notice we got a cord too, because I have to leave this phone corded at all times or it goes dead quick. It's got a bad battery in it and I just haven't had a chance to get it replaced. So enough explanations, let's get the radiator in. So we're going to get you up here on the pod, and the pod's going to sit on top of the engine. So that way you can see from the windshield view what we're doing here. So don't mind the noise in the background. Apparently people still mow their yards on the holiday. It's 4th of July and I would expect them not to be working today since everybody else isn't except for me. I always work. Alright, so let's see if we got you in a good shot here where you can see what we're going to be doing. Yeah, see, that's about right where we want you. So we need to tape up that electrical real quick before we get the radiator in. So let me go grab some electrical tape. We'll tape that up and then we'll get started. Okay, I wanted to give you a quick overview of the radiator since we're getting ready to put that back in. This is the side that faces the engine. So that's the lower hose and that's the upper hose because the transmission lines are on the side of the lower hose. Anyway, see them little points right there? Let me zoom in a little bit so you can get a better look at them. That's those clips. If you get your clips in, that's what they look like. You have 3 connecting points on your clip. So when you put the transmission line back in the radiator, it'll snap and you'll hear an audible click. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. Also, these down here is where your cooling fan feet sit. Your cooling fan seat are right here. Okay, when you slide this down in, that'll slide down into there and then your bolts go in right in here in the event that you don't see that. Now on the other side, if we flip the radiator over, you see those little feet down there on the bottom? That's where your AC condenser lives, down in those feet right there. And then they bolt into those that connection there and this one over there. You want to do the AC part last after you get the radiator secured into the car. And we still got this bracket we got to deal with. I also want to make a clarification on something. The bar that goes across from there over to there that we have to take out to get everything out, that is a radiator core support bar. I've been calling it a crash bar. It is a radiator core support bar. So I want to make sure my terminology is right for you so that I don't get somebody saying, hey, you're calling it the wrong thing. Because I know somebody out there is going to be doing that to me and I don't want that to happen. So, alright, I'm pointing you over here for a reason. Get ready to put the radiator in. You got to tip the radiator almost a 90-degree angle. And you got to get the lower radiator hose underneath this mount right here. If you don't, you won't get it in the car. So let's get our radiator reinstalled. Now if it leaks out coolant, don't worry about it. We bought a brand new gallon of antifreeze for it. We're going to top off the fluids when we're done. So make sure that your supports are in their slots. Them little boots right there, they go on here. on the end of the radiator. You'll see it in a minute. So you want to take your radiator, you want to tip it almost a complete total 90 degrees. And like I said, there might be coolant still in it, so if it splashes out, don't worry about it. You want to slide this thing down, and then you want to tip it to the side, pick it up, and just kind of keep pulling back on this bracket right here. Don't worry about the condenser. You want to get this, let's see, we got to get it to this side of that core support. You got to slide this down. Don't worry about hitting it right off the target. Just worry about getting it in the hole. We can always set it up after we get it down in position. Alright, now we got that bracket in the way, and our radiator is almost all the way in. We got to pull this bracket back, and we got to get our radiator to fall down inside our mounts there. And we got to push it down in there, make sure it's seated all the way. If there's anything in the way, make sure you pull back on this bracket right here, because that bracket's going to get caught underneath the radiator and it's going to keep it from seating all the way. Alright. Your boots are going to ride up your radiator, but just make sure that you're solid in your holes. That's all you got to worry about. And then you can go pull the bracket back, reach in from behind, line up your condenser. You're going to have to get in from the front of the radiator, pick up on the condenser. Make sure both sides are in before you push down on the condenser. And this one's not in all the way, so I got to move it around until I can get it in position. I got to slide this thing to the side a little bit because it's out of alignment on this passenger side here. Let's see. Looks good there. Does not look good down there though. Got to pick up on the condenser on the passenger side. So you can use the hoses to do that with. You see the radiator roll back? That's because the condenser's in line on the passenger side. You got to make sure we're in line on the driver's side, and we're not. Sometimes if you can do it, you can roll the radiator forward towards the engine, lock the condenser in, and then push it back. Sometimes you can do that. This one, I'm unable to do that with it, but okay, I got the radiator mounted. I got the condenser installed. You have to put it in passenger side first. There's a little notch in the condenser that slides down inside the radiator. If you don't get that notch right, it throws the whole thing off of alignment. So we're ready for cooling fans. Oh, I want to show you my tape job down there. You see my tape job down there on the B positive lug? Yeah, nice, isn't it? What I'd like to do, if I had the material to do it, is I'd like to rewrap his primary wiring here and then reattach it to the car, because you know, it's kind of important. It runs from his fuse box all the way across to the there's a connector splice down underneath the transmission where that goes into, and it also comes up and wraps around the back of the engine and comes over to the PCM. And with it being exposed like that, it's a wiring nightmare. So anywho, moving right along, at this point you want to hook up your lower transmission line. So it's not this, I think it's this one right here. Nope, it's not that one. Let's see, it's going to be, yeah, actually I think it is that one. That one hooks up down here on this bottom pin right here. Yep, it goes right in there. You want to just kind of, it don't want to snap in, so we're going to have to pull back our clips just a little bit, push that line in, and then it snaps in. So let me get that bottom line hooked up and I'll be right back. Okay, we got the lower transmission line on. It's snapped in there. You just got to, when you put it in, you got to rotate it around and make sure it locks in all the way. We're going to wait to put the upper radiator hose on till the end. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to hook up that lower radiator hose. As soon as I get you down in position where you can see what we're doing here. I think you can kind of see where we're at. Here's your thermostat over here. Your lower hose goes on down there. And this hose is even marked so you know which end goes where. This end here has engine written on it. That goes on the thermostat. This end here has rad on it. See, it's just so rad. Goes on the radiator side. You always want to check your hoses before you put them back on. If they feel unusually spongy or the rubber comes off on your hand, as happens a lot on vacuum hoses, you want to replace your hose. So we're going to insert this end onto, we got to get it rotated to where we're, put the radiator side on first. Don't worry about your clamp right now. Alright, and then you put your engine side on second as your camera falls over. Get a better view over here. Well, actually, I'll put you up here on the engine. You can still see. Alright, put your radiator on first, then you can put your engine on second. Go ahead and clamp it down. Alright, get your clamps, your pliers out. And just kind of try to put this back in the notch it came out of. And this clamp is one of them auto locking clamps. If you don't want to spend the next 45 minutes trying to unlock it, don't set it. What you can do is you can get your pliers to crimp it down to where it's just about to set, but not far enough up where it actually does set. And then you can rock your clamp up on your hose where it needs to go. Like so. See where it's just about to lock. And then you lose grip on your pliers. They do that as an added convenience, but spend 45 minutes trying to disengage that tang. See, I accidentally engaged the tang. So let me show you how I disengage the tang. There is a slot in the top of the clamp for this particular purpose. You gotta make sure not to pinch yourself. You wanna, well, if you can use that tang, you would pinch the tang back and it would disengage the clamp. I just do it like that. That's an added convenience, but it's also a curse at the same time. Especially if you're got a clamp in a confined space. It's a real pain in the neck to get that damn thing to come apart. Alright, so our hose is on there. We got to tighten up our worm clamp down there. That's just your basic 8mm on your ratchet. Alright, so you want to keep going on this. Just take your socket here on the end of your ratchet, or your extension in this case. You're going to reach down here and position your hose clamp where you want it. Stick your thumb down on it to hold it in place. And then just kind of spin it down until you feel it grab. Then you want to pick it up just a little bit to where it's almost at a 90-degree angle. So where your extension piece is sticking straight up. Because that's how you're going to tighten it down. Okay. Now if you don't have this and you have the clamp like on top, you would just line it up and let it go. Somebody somewhere has replaced this radiator and I guess the clamp broke or they lost it. So they put a worm clamp in, which is great because, you know, worm clamps are good things. Go ahead and just tighten it up. Tight as you can get it. There we go. That's nice and snug. It's digging into the rubber just slightly where you want it to go. Alright, here comes the fun part. I say that sarcastically, of course. We're going to put the cooling fans back in, and you're going to get to see it from the forward view. You're going to get to see the struggle, because we have an added problem on this car. We have to slide it down through here, but I got to pull this back, and I also have to be mindful of my electrical down there. If I can get it past all of that, we'll be in good shape. So here's our cooling fans. They go in like this. Alright, so anyway, you're going to tip this back, and you're going to get it past your core supports on the sides. It's going to go down all the way to the bottom. You're going to pull these this brace back so you can get it down in there. Now you're going to get hung up on the one side of this, so you want to just make sure you kind of just guide it down nice and easy. And once it falls down in, you want to pick it up, and you'll feel the catch on the bottom of the radiator where them feet go in. Make sure your feet go in, and then you can put your bolts in. See, part one, the part that you probably won't see because I edited it out, is I was debating on whether or not to pull the upper hose. So I showed you what happens if you don't pull the upper hose, and it's an added struggle. So it would be to your advantage if you want to get this out in any timely fashion, to just go ahead and pull the upper hose, because as you can see with the hose gone, we don't have to worry about pushing the hose back or moving it around or anything like that. So we can get this done quicker and get on to the next thing we got to get done. You can go ahead and tighten these up as you put them in. So, alright, so now we can go through and hook up our transmission line. And at this point, if you had to remove the retaining hardware that goes in this hole and the bottom hole, you're not even looking at me. If you remove this bolt and that bottom bolt, now would be the time to hook them up. Since I didn't have them to begin with, I'm not going to worry about it. So I'm going to grab our other hose here that we tied up to our throttle cable. We're going to take it, we're going to snap it back in place. And you'll know this is the right line, because if you take this over, it matches right up. So we're not going to worry about that, because we didn't have to worry about that in the beginning. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to get our upper radiator hose installed, which is right here. We're just going to bring you around over here so you can see what we're doing. This hose just rolls down in the front here, plugs back on to right here. Now if you want to wait and do this part at the very end, like the very last thing you do, go for it. I'm putting it on now because it's just what I'm used to. So we got to get this tightened down. We got our cooling fans tightened down. We got our AC condenser tightened down. We got our upper and lower clamps on our lower radiator hose done. You heard the transmission line snap into place, in case you're like curious about what that sounds like. You also want to wiggle it and try to pull on it to make sure it don't come out, because sometimes it'll partially snap and you'll be able to pull it straight out still. So you just want to kind of a little bit of added security there, if you will. And it's got this one nice and tight. Alright, now we got to put the radiator core support back in, which is that bar I keep calling a crash bar. So I'm going to go grab that real quick. Now I'll explain this a little bit to you, this core support bar. This bar, grab the pod here so I can show it to you. Alright, now this bar, it sits on top of these unpainted ends, and the reason that I put the bolts back in it is so I don't forget where they went. So if I come up here to where I keep my bolts, which is on the cowl, I've got 4 bolts here that I know go to this centerpiece, and then I've got these 2 big bolts, they go to the pieces over here. Alright, you can leave the bolts in it except for these 2 in the middle. These 2 in the middle have to come out because it goes underneath this bar here, and that's what attaches this to this. So you can take these 2 out. You can leave the 2 for the radiator in until you're ready to put those mounting brackets on. We'll just set these over on the table. When you install this, this ledge goes towards the front of the car. See, I'll show you. See, it fits right down in there. And you pick your bar up, slide it over the top like that. You want to make sure that your holes are lined up for your bolts, and if you want to, you can try to stick a bolt through on each side. Alright, we got that bolt in. Let's try to get this bolt in next. There it is. And then we'll come over here to the other side. And we'll come over here to the other side, and we'll get these 2 bolts in over here next to the computer. You can see pretty good right there. Grab our other bolts right here, and we'll put those bolts in. We can tighten them up now if we want to, or we can wait. I'm going to go get my 15 socket, and we're going to zip those down real quick. Alright, so we're going to you can push your computer back a little bit, you can get in here. I'm going to go over these with a ratchet wrench and tighten them down. Come over here, get this side. When you get the passenger side, let me show you the passenger side real quick. There's that bolt that sits next to the washer reservoir right over here on this side. When you pull this back to get in there, do it very carefully, especially because I've seen this neck break off before. That's the last thing you need to do is break the neck off on that thing, because then you got to pull it out from the fender well. And you've seen in part 1 where the whole bucket sits, and I've changed one of those. It is not fun. And you want to grab your 15 wrench. You want to take your 15 wrench, just kind of double check it real quick. See, you do it like this because it fits in here nicely, and you don't have to worry about your socket getting trapped between stuff. You come over here and you do the same thing over here on this side. Make sure you get these nice and tight. This is part of your structural integrity of your car right here. You don't want it being loose. You hit something with that being loose, you could die. Alright, now we got to put our crossbar back in up front here, but we got to be careful with this because there's 2 bolts that go inside the grill down underneath the car. We got to make sure that when we tighten this up, those holes line up on the bottom, because if they don't, we're going to be taking this back apart again and redoing it. So you want to go ahead and look this way, because we're over here now. You want to go ahead and put this together like this. These are adjustable, so if you need to move these, you can. And we'll tighten this up, and then we'll move on to the core supports. Tighten these up. And you'll know they're right because these will sit flat if the bottom's lined up. Alright, so let's go get our radiator pieces. Alright, we're going to put our radiator mounting brackets in next. These are keyed, as you can see. They even have different part numbers on them. They have different part numbers on them. L for left, R for right. These fit like this. Let me show you how these fit. We're going to put the driver's side on first. Driver's side is going to be L. And they fit just like this. They go down on here. And then you want to pull your radiator forward. That J clip will automatically align to the bolt hole. And you want to pop that down on there. You want to do the same thing on the passenger side. You don't want to tighten these up till they're both on. Makes it easier that way. Put the other side back on. Notice I had to pull back on the, when I pulled back on the bracket, the radiator shifted forward. That's so it can line up with the way it's designed. Now we got our bolt and we can tighten it down. Don't worry about getting these very tight. They snug everything up. Did you see that? I hope you caught that. It's snugged up real good. Alright, so the front of the car is back together, except for we got those 4 bolts to go inside the center right here. We got to get those 4 bolts put in. So let's grab 4 bolts. And they all look the same, so you just got to kind of match them up, make sure they're the same lengths. Now we've got 2 bolts left. Those 2 bolts go in the bottom of this brace right here. So that makes sense that we have 2 bolts left. That means we've used all of our bolts in the appropriate holes. And we have no bolts remaining. So we got to put our bolts in our plastic right here. Which is not really that difficult. And just a little bit of a struggle to get in there because these are new bolts. Because he didn't have any bolts in this car for this side. I've basically gone through over the last year that he's been coming here, and every time I see a missing bolt I put one in it. I don't charge him nothing for it because it's not his fault they're missing. See, we have a lot of shops in town that they are pretty bad at what they do. They take a car apart and then they don't put parts back on it. Like when I first saw this car, he was missing the under splash shield. And he didn't even know it was missing. Nobody told him. That's why attention to detail is important in this job. Granted, these are fixed fasteners, so you know they're for a reason. But one day, if I find the right fasteners for this car, like if I'm at a salvage yard pulling other stuff, I'll pull a bunch of these bolts and bring them back. And then the next time he comes in for a service, I'll replace the ones I put in here with the OE ones, and then I'll just save these in a box for some other job later on down the road. Here comes the part that I videotaped this in my video when I redid the oil filter adapter. These bolts go down underneath. If you do this right, you won't have to go hunting for your bolts. I can't get the camera down in there, so I'm just going to put these bolts back in underneath here. And then when I come back, we'll put the air box back in and we'll get ready to add our fluids to it. Don't forget to hook up your cooling fans. You get busy and you start putting stuff together, and probably a good idea to do this before you put this upper radiator hose on. It's easier to get to your connectors that way, especially this middle connector. This one right here, I don't know if you can see it very well, needs to snap back in, so there you go. Now your cooling fans are hooked up. Also, after you start the car, check the alignment on your belt. This one's off a tooth. Probably because the idler was too far inward. So to fix that, you just go down there with your tool down inside there, loosen up the tension on it, push this belt over a little bit, and as long as it didn't slide off the rest of the pulley system, you should be good to go. So I'm going to do that, and then of course we got to put this cover back on. So we'll put the cover back on. We'll do that off camera because you've seen that before. So yeah, make sure you do that before you start your car up. Okay, now we're ready to add our coolant. So, oh, by the way, we'll put the cover on this last. You don't have to put it on right now. We're going to put our coolant in, and we're going to let it just sit and get the air bubbles out of it. And we're going to kind of monitor it. You've got some marks on the side of your reservoir here. Full cold is right here, right above the torque bar here. So you want to fill it up to that point, but it's going to be kind of burple. You want to use proper coolant. This is Dexcool. This car had green in it, but the green's universal, so we're going to put Dexcool back in it. As long as you stay with what it requires, you'll be fine. We're just going to fill this up. When we fill this up, we're going to check for leaks. So anywhere, any hose that came loose off that side of the engine or over here, you're going to, as you fill this up, you're going to listen for any kind of draining noise, like a trickle noise. And then just keep adding it till it's full. You want to do this about 3 or 4 times, and then you want to pull your funnel out and check your reservoir. Sometimes you'll start seeing the fluid coming up in the reservoir like I am. And we'll put a little bit more in it, but we'll do it without the funnel. So we'll set the funnel to the side, and we'll kind of eyeball it. That's why you don't want to eyeball it, because you make a mess everywhere. Hold it. You want to hold your container like this. You just want to fill it back up. Now if it looks like it's not going anywhere, it's because it's filling up the radiator. But you will eventually see it start to rise. And there's a space in here where it looks like it went from this color to black. You want to get it not quite up to that level. So now what we'll do is we'll start it up and run it, and then we'll just kind of pay attention to our reservoir over here. Now we did have transmission disconnected, and I know I probably already mentioned this, but I'll mention it again in case it didn't get recorded. When you check the transmission fluid, you need it warm, idling, and park. And to check it, your dipstick is right here, right on the other side of that hose right there. So you'll start it up and you'll run it through the gears, then you'll check it. If it's down at all, add small measurements like less than 1/4. Then you'll check it again. And what I mean by check it again is the procedure goes like this. Your car's running, okay? You'll pull your dipstick out. You'll check it, okay? You got your measurements right here on your dipstick, okay? So as long as it's anywhere from this line right here to this line, you're fine. You can also check it cold. It has to be between this line and this line here. If it's in between this line, you're okay, but you want to start it up and run it first, okay? So you'll start it up and run it. You'll take it through the gears, and it even tells you on the back what kind of fluid to use. This uses Dextron 6, which is what I have, And then you want to check it in park with the engine idling. You'll put it back in and you'll turn it. You'll run it through the gears, put it back in park, let the engine idle back down, come back out and check it again. Add little bits at a time until you're up within that cross-hatched area. Once you're in the cross-hatched area, you're good to go. You're ready. So, let me get our air box and we'll put our air box back on. Alright, so we got our air box. This is actually, it goes this way here, because you got your two tubes that go on there. So, because this came off, we're going to just set that to the side because I got to put that back in. And it looks like my hole's about stripped out, so I might have to figure out a different way to do it. This fits down just like this. You're going to slide this down past that bump stop right there. Get the back of it inside the lines right here. Push your snorkel tube back to where you can get past the snorkel tube. Push your hose back so you can get past that. Make sure you have no electrical in the way. We had some electrical in the way in part 1, and that's probably causing some problems because it's unmetered air coming in. You want to make sure you're clear of your computer, and this thing should slide straight down and snap right in if we did our job right. Make sure all your electrical's out of the way. You got a couple snap clips up on the front here you got to snap. I'll show you them. Alright. And silver clips are your snap clips. You got 3 of them. This one's missing one, but it would be over here on this far side right here where my finger is. So we got our cover on. We got to put our filter back in. This is shaped to fit in this hole right here, so you want to line it up to that hole and set it down. Then you can put your air box cover back on. This also has some retaining parts you got to get it lined into, but you can put your snorkel tube on while you're doing it. And then this hose here snaps on. This hose here lines up to a notch in the air tube. There we go. Now we just got to put our screw back down in and hook our mass airflow sensor back up so we don't get any mass airflow codes. Plus it'll run like garbage if you don't have that connected. And then we got to plug our, and then we got to grab our tool here and tighten down our air box. Now you're supposed to have a screw in this far side, but he doesn't have one. So that's going to be one of the things I'm going to bring back for him, is one of those screws. You can run it without one, but on some cars you'll get a message on your computer that says service emissions or something like that. It could also cause your service StabiliTrak light to come on. I don't know why, because it's got nothing to do with your traction control. So we're ready to start, so let me go get a key and we'll get this thing started. We got one more thing to do before we can start the car. We got to put the battery back together. So, last step, of course, you got to put your stuff on under the hood. You go reconnect your battery. You just set it up like that, and then you get it started by hand. And then you want to tighten it up. You'll hear your CD player start working, and you'll hear all your electrical come to life. Your dome lights may not come on, but then again, it just all depends on how your car's set up. After you get your battery plugged back in, pick your seat back up. Before you tip it down in there, you want to pick up your seat belt buckle. Goes in that slot right there. Same on the other side. Put your seat belts up, tuck it down underneath the back first. And then you want to push down on the seat and lock it in gear, or lock it in place. You want to come around here on this side, do the same thing on this side. Right over here, push down about mid-seat, locks it in place. You're good to go. Anything you took out of the back seat, put it back where it was. Now we're ready to start. I'll be right back. Okay, we're ready to start the car. You might notice that I put the wheel back on. I don't usually start a car on a jack. I find that to be a bad idea. One other thing we need to do before we start is put that box back on, that box top back on. Alright, so we got to put this box top back on, then we can start the car up. These usually snap in, but the snaps on this one are broke, so you're going to have to go without snaps. Alright, let's see if she'll start. Alright, now I'm going to show you a neat little device this car has in it. If you have a DTS and you didn't know about this, I'm about to show you a really neat little device here. You got a control panel over here on the side and you got a message display right here, right? So we're going to move this around. Look at that. Tells us our battery voltage, 14.3 volts. We're going to turn on our headlights. We're going to hit our check box there. We're going to run the engine up. Look at that. No battery light. We're running 14.4 volts with the headlights on. We're done. This, oh, see, there we go. 14.5 volts. We're good to go. We're going to just top off the, well, let's check our transmission. Let's make sure we got transmission still. And then we're going to put it up in park and we're going to let it warm up and check the fluids on it. So, that does it for this video. We replaced the alternator on this 07 DTS just before the rain hit. So, if you like this one, go ahead and like and share and comment, all the good stuff. Don't forget to subscribe. We're almost to 1,000 subscribers. Which, if we do 1,000 subscribers, I'll come up with something to celebrate. So, we'll see you on the next one.